Alright, so Google Sheets is for analyzing data. I'm not going through my Google Drive. I've already got some data that I want to take a look at. So the first thing I'm going to take a look at and show you is the average. So if you want to use like an average, you can do equals average, and then you type in what you want to average with a or actually not a semicolon, a colon. So B2 to B9 is what I want to average. And what I can do after I've done that once, I can actually grab this and drag it across, and it automatically starts taking averages of those columns like I want it to. So C2 to C9, D2 to D9, E2 to E9, so on and so forth. So I actually could come through here and I can delete that just to show you how to do it. So again, equals, I start typing average, and it says suggestion based on data. So that's what I like. It actually will suggest. So I do that. I hit enter. It's averaging that. And again, I can drag this across, and it's going to go ahead and average all those together. Okay. And you'll see that there's a chart down here already taking on the data. So I'll show you what to do with that. All right. And we can actually change the chart type that's there, but before I do that, I'm actually going to delete this chart off. I'm going to show you actually how to do some other things before I do that. So the first thing is I'm going to hide this row and get rid of it. So I right clicked and hit the row, so I don't want to look at that. And I'm actually going to turn my filter on. Okay. Well, I don't know why my filter turned on just there. Hold on one second. Okay, so let's try it again. You select here, and then you click the filter. It'll turn your columns into a filter. And so maybe on the top, you want to see, who scored best in, let's say, February. So if I click on that and I sort A to Z, it'll start at the bottom and go up. So I can actually clearly see, back in February, Sandy did the best on whatever test it was. I can do the same thing here. I can sort A to Z. Same thing. It's going to let me know, hey, okay, Wendy did the best. Maybe I want it on top, so I can sort Z to A. So Wendy's doing the best in November, and you can kind of look at it that way if you needed to go back and look at scores. Okay, so I'm going to turn that filter off, and I'm going to unhide the row. Okay, now that my row's back. Alright, so we're going to take a look at how you can actually create a column, and we'll take a look at some other things that you can do with formulas. Alright, so that's the filter. So just remember how to filter, because that is important for the Educator Level 1, is how to use this filter. So if you need to go back and look at that, please do. Alright, so some other things you can do while you're in here. I can select all the data, I can insert, and I can insert a chart. And it defaults to whatever chart it thinks. One thing you can do here, it's showing me like their scores and then giving me by month, and that's not a bad way to look at it. That's not a bad way to look at your data. If I spread this out and kind of look at it, I'm going to bring it up here. So it's not a bad way to look at your data. I can look at August or by color for each student, so I can actually kind of pick out, all right, what months was the student struggling. So like Ralph, I can look at Ralph in October and Ralph in September, and I'm like, look, he scored low in those times. Maybe Ralph had something going on. So this is a good way to look at your data. If you switch it, this is also a pretty good way to look at your data, because this is kind of like what we looked at before. I can quickly get snapshots of who scored best and when. So in June, Sandy did best. It's obvious to me that Sandy did the best in June. And then as I come over here, I can see Wendy, the blue line is Wendy, and Wendy does pretty good in the beginning, but then it looks like Wendy drops off for a while. Maybe I need to have a discussion with Wendy, what happened during that time of the year, or, what have you. All right. We can actually switch the style. So we can switch this to a line. And so again, I can kind of have like a view of what's going on over time. We could do, let's see, we could do a scatter plot for the kind of the same idea. That's a little confusing looking, but you could look at the data that way. bubble charts. Yeah, I didn't think those would make much sense. So bubble charts wouldn't make much sense even if you undid them, but you could look and click on it and find out some data there, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for bubble charts because I'm not real sure what it's doing. It looks like it might be taking maybe the last score that student scored. All right, going back to the data, I'm going to switch this back to a line, not a smooth line, a line chart, and look at it that way, and then we can resize it, make it smaller so it's not in our way. And what I would actually do on this one, I think it makes more sense to switch them and look at it by month for each student. So now I can actually watch Wendy's fall and rise, and I can watch these others. So that's pretty good. Over here, you can remove one or edit them. So maybe you don't want the class average to show up. So I can actually say remove the class average, because that doesn't make much sense to put inside of there really if I'm trying to look at it as an individual. All right, so you can always remove these. And anytime you're trying to look at certain individuals, you could actually remove all of these to look at a particular individual's growth at any point in time. All right. So some other things you could do, you can add more decimals. So it might make sense for you to add more decimals. And then maybe the format isn't right. Maybe you need a percent format. Maybe you need a financial format. Maybe it's a date and time, or maybe it's even a duration that you're trying to look at. So based on what you're doing, you may need to do that. If you want to add that to multiple columns, so maybe I want to add that to all the columns I can actually increase the number of decimals by just clicking that, and you'll see that the decimals just keep increasing. So depending on how specific you want to get, and again, if I want to take that off, I click this, and I take those decimals back away. Okay, so that's depending on how many decimals you want to look at. Again, if I want to change these to percentages, I just click here. Now they're percentages. It's automatically just multiplying them by 100. So just be careful with that, depending on what you're trying to do. Okay, so I take that back off. Actually, I'll just change it back to a number. All right, so let's continue. Actually, let me take my decimals down a little bit. There we go. All right. So another thing you can do, maybe this row needs to have larger text. So you can actually increase the text of rows. And then you'll notice that there's some weird things going on. I can't read all of this. So to fix that, I can actually click Format. And then I can go to Text Wrapping, and I can click Wrap. And then it will actually move that down. So anytime it doesn't look right and you need to see all the text that's there, that's what you need to do, is do the wrapping of the text. Okay. Another thing that you can do with the format is you can do text rotation. Sometimes that makes sense for particular things. You can also do conditional formatting. So what I really like about that is if I want to conditionally format this, I can click Format, and I can conditionally format, and I can say, look, if the cell is less than, let's say, I wanted them to score at least 4, then I want it to turn red. Well, not the text, the field color turns red. Text color will keep black. All right, so I click Done. So what it's doing now for me is it's turning anything that was below a 4 red. And maybe a good score, let's say greater than, let's say a good score is 7. Anything greater than 7, turn that green, and click Done. Okay, so now I have a nice snapshot of, good scores and what I would maybe consider bad scores, and so I get a nice clear snapshot of that. And so this could be done by student, and now I can quickly see, Sam and Albert, they're struggling a little bit. There were a couple of times they did pretty well, but these students in particular seem to struggle a little bit. So that would be something for me to actually be able to look at. Again, the class average doesn't make too much sense to look at. So unless you were trying to figure out maybe there was a month where you were particularly low as a teacher, maybe you just felt you didn't cover the material well, but you can quickly look at that if you wanted to just by clicking around here. Another formula that you want to be familiar with is the count. So I can equal count A, count the number of values in a data set. Okay, so count A, how many values are in this data set? B2 to B9. Another formula for that you would want to definitely use is the unique one. So if you click equals, then you type unique, and then click the column that you want to see if it's unique or not. What this does is it's going to search this, and anything that's been duplicated it's not going to use. So when I click enter, it only pulls the values that do not duplicate, or pulls them from just one. Where that could be useful is if a student in particular maybe took a quiz more than once and they shouldn't have, you can actually get rid of that one by doing that unique feature. So if I hit Command Z, it undoes what I just did. Another one is sum. So if I do sum, and then I can select values just by clicking and holding down. So sum of B2 to B9. So it's just going to add all those up, and I can get a nice sum of that. I can undo that, and it goes away. You'll notice it's updating this chart over here because at the beginning I clicked here to select all. So anytime I add any new data, it's going to actually show up in this chart. That's a pretty nice feature. The last thing is we're going to do a sort. So if I go to Tools, after I select everything, actually you don't click Tools, you click Data, and then you click Sort Range. Okay, so now I can actually sort the range, and I can say that the data has a header row because it actually does. And so I can sort by student all the way up to June, which is the last month. So maybe I want to sort it by student A to Z, and then after that I want it to sort August from Z to A. Now numerically that means low score to high score. High score to low score. If I did this, this would be low to high score. So I want the high score on top. So first student and then high score for August. So when I click OK and sort, it'll sort even using that class average. So I'm going to actually hide that. That's out of the way. And so now it's sorting by student and then from low to high. Okay, so by student and then low to high. Okay, if I don't like that rule, I go back up to data, and well, first I have to select, then I click data, and then I can click sort range. And if I don't like that, again, I can go to data row and I can just say, you know what, do just student A to Z, and then I click sort, and it does that. I can undo any sort that I've done by just clicking undo, and now that sorting process is done, and that sorting is no longer there. That is another important part that you want to know for your data when you're using when you're taking the Educator Level 1, is definitely know how to sort. So again, you click there, you click data, and you sort the range. That's just a good thing to know how to do. So this is a little bit different than the filter. The filter, the filter option is a little bit different. So when I click the filter, this is allowing me to filter individual rows at a time. And so I can do filter conditions and all kinds of stuff. So I can say, I can filter on greater than. So if it's greater than 5, I click OK. Now it's only showing me the things in September that are or it's showing me for all of them that are greater than 5. So nothing on here is less than 5 anymore. So that's what the filters are for. And I can turn those filters off just by clicking none and clicking OK. And then those filters are gone. So a filter isn't quite the same as a sort. So if I want to sort it again, I go to data and sort range. If I want to filter stuff down and get rid of things, you would do the filter by conditions, or you may want to do filter by values. So I can search, just show me the ones here. And so when I click OK, it's just showing me those. So again, to undo that, I just click undo. So the filter is for getting rid of data so that you can kind of narrow down into data that you want to look at. And then the sorting is just when you want to manipulate the data to look for particular trends, maybe. Okay, that's everything in Google Sheets that you need to know for Educator Level 1.